and welcome to our live stream on Sunday, November 13th. And today we're talking about, again, another episode of Violets on the Window, where Patricia, the young woman who died at an early age, 19, and went to St. Sebastian Colony. It's above the city St. Sebastian, and the state in Brazil is Minas Gerais. Now, Patricia has been in the colony for a while. She's learned how to volatilate. That means move by thought. She's learned how not to have to eat solid food. She just drinks water, absorbs energy from the atmosphere. And that's all she needs in order to supply her ethereal body with all the energy she needs, because you are a lighter, less dense, more energy, ratio higher energy than matter when you are in the spirit world. Of course, as you go higher in the spirit world, you become a higher ratio of energy to matter. And of course, those people in the lower zone or the dark abyss, which is below that, are denser than spirits in heaven, although they, of course, in the lower zone, the spirits all are around at our level. We can't see them because they are less dense than we are. We here on Earth are pretty full of matter and, not much energy. So let's talk about Patricia visits her Earth home. So before I begin, please hit the subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like button, please. That way you can be notified. After you hit the bell, you're notified when I live stream, which is every Sunday and Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Now, I have a lot of people around the world listen to us, so it's 5 p.m. Eastern, United States. So let's get into it. So this is about a spirit, Patricia, when she's going to visit her Earth home. Let me hide this. Let's carry on. So Patricia wrote, "My grandmother told me that I would be able to visit my family sometime in the near future. I was feeling well, happy, so I waited gladly for that day. The recommendations were many, with Grandma and her friends talking to me for hours at home. Patricia, in your house, you must be cheerful all the time. Remember all the love that existed in your home. The tenderness among all of you is not gone. That earthly home continues to be yours, but remember you don't live there anymore. Even if you feel like staying, you can't. You're only visiting. Your place is here. We love you and we want you back here." So that's kind of set the stage. This is what she was told. She kind of knows the rules of when she visits home. So now, before we get into Patricia's sojourn at home, let's talk about two others. One was a complete disaster. Another one turned out pretty well. So the first one was in the book A Liberation by the spirit Camilo Branco. And he committed suicide. He was sent to first the lower zone for a number of years until he would have died naturally. Then he was sent to a hospital, and he and other suicides, all of Portuguese descent, were in this hospital learning what they did wrong, how they should have waited, a week, a month, a year. Something would have always come to help them through those great trials that they decided to opt out of. But this one man who had committed suicide because he had embezzled from the bank, because he had throat cancer, and he, left his wife and children destitute. He had 2 girls and a son, I believe. And so when he was in this hospital, he was getting better. He said, "No, I have to see my family. I have to see my family." And of course, everyone recommended to him, said, "No, we don't recommend. You're not ready to see your family yet. You don't understand the processes of the spirit world. You don't have the breadth of knowledge to know that people must go through hard trials." And what I believe is he didn't understand that his family, they would have to go through the trials of being destitute after he had killed himself. But of course, he said, "No, I want to see my family." So he went and talked to the manager of the hospital. And of course, he girded himself to see this very bureaucratic person, and he was surprised that the manager of the hospital said, "No, look, I'm just a humble servant. I'm here to help you, but I really recommend you're not emotionally ready. You don't understand enough of what you go through and what others go through, it would be too dramatic and traumatic for you. There's no, I want to go. I said, okay, we'll let you go. And this is what spirit world does. If you really want to do something stupid and you just insist on it, they'll go, okay, you can do something stupid. We'll let you. So he went down and he saw that his son was in prison. I think he had tried to steal something. So his son was in big trouble. His wife and one daughter were just poor as church mice. They just had nothing. His other daughter got hooked up with some really bad people in a bar, and she was being almost daily abused by people in that bar. Now, what he didn't know is that his daughter who was being abused in the bar, horrible for him to see this. It just tore him apart and made him feel so guilty because of his act of suicide had left his family destitute. But what he didn't know is his daughter in a previous life was a pimp who treated the women under his domain horribly. And of course, this is what the spirit world does. Every action has a reaction. So therefore, his daughter, now in a female form, was being treated as he caused others to be treated under him in a previous life. So that's why this poor soul who felt so guilty and just horrible that what he did led to his the disasters for his children. And he just lost it. They had to go back down and rescue him and bring him up, and they had to kind of get him back to where he was again because he felt so bad of all the effects of his horrible action. So that's one story of someone who had visited their family. Now let's go to a story that was successful before we get into Patricia's story of her visiting her family in the book Violets on the Window. So in one of the communications from Spirits of the Reverend G. Val Owen, they were talking about a family. This woman actually was in the spirit world, and she had died at an early age, and she left 3 children, kind of like an 8-year-old girl, kind of a 5-6-year-old, and like a 3-year-old boy. They're very young family. And her husband, she poor woman, she just was preoccupied. The other women in her group and kind of the I don't know how you would call it, like the spiritual angel mother of the group, who was of a higher level and trying to help them spiritually. They knew that she was having problems concentrating on fixing herself because she was so preoccupied with her family. She goes, no, I want to go back. And I said, hey, look, going back to help your family, you don't have enough power yet. You haven't learned enough. How effective are you going to be? Well, I want to go back. Okay, we'll send you back, but we're going to have people with you. And so, okay. So then they went back home, and then they went into a scene around like the dinner table, and there was the father and the 3 children and the 8-year-old daughter. And the 8-year-old daughter was saying, I don't know, Dad, if I really want to go with my aunt, the 3 of us. I don't really want to do that. And his father was thinking, yeah, I know, but how can I handle 3 young children? I have to work all day. And so the mother tried to put her hand on the little girl to communicate to her, but she just couldn't do it. And so then one of the other spirits came in and put her hand on the child's head, and the child said, look, Dad, Mom is in heaven with the angels. Mom is an angel now. If Mom's an angel, she can help us. And I'm sure my mother could get other angels to help us out here. And then then they can read the father's mind, of course, because spirits can read other people's mind. And the father said, she's thinking in a way, I don't really want to give up my family. I love them so much. I want to try myself. Let's try it. And so this made this woman, who really wasn't ready to go visit her family, you could tell, because she couldn't communicate to the child. She tried, but just didn't have the skill at that time. They went back up, and they talked to the angel mother, and one of the spirits who were with her said, look, they said, her family is in kind of need of help. and it's possible we can make it work. And so the angel mother said, okay, you need to concentrate on studying. You need to learn what the spirit world is like, do better here, and we'll help your family. And we'll actually have as some of your tasks as you are learning about the spirit world and helping other spirits will be to go and help your family. But we need to have those who are very experienced in this help your family. So they would do things like help, people volunteer to watch the kids, maybe get the husband a raise or a new job that pays better. They do all these little things. In fact, one time I was talking to this woman who had a near-death experience, and she couldn't work anymore. It was just too much for her. But she kept helping veterans who had post-traumatic syndrome. And she told me that, out of the blue, she says, I'm so poor, but I was given this opportunity to live in a house in a park, and all I had to do was just like watch the park. And I told her that, I said, look, this was not out of the blue. This was not happenstance. This is because even though you could not work, you still volunteered and you helped others. When you volunteer, when you pray, when you meditate, when you help others, you in turn will be helped by your watchful spirits, your guardian angel, their friends. Because a guardian angel is just not by him or herself. Guardian angel has friends. You have friends in the spirit world you probably don't even know about, who, if you need and you meditate and pray and you exhibit a quest to become spiritually more enlightened, you will be helped in that endeavor and in other ways and help make your life comfortable so you can have the luxury and the fortitude to concentrate on increasing your spiritual quotient, because after all, that's why we are here. We're not here to amass billions of dollars or buy those big yachts, or have the biggest house or the nicest cars. We're here to advance spiritually. That doesn't mean if we make money and we make it honestly, that it's perfectly fine to be wealthy and to spend your money on what you want, as long as you control your money doesn't control you. So now we've talked about those two stories. Let's talk about what Patricia found, given that background of a happy and a not so happy incident. So then Patricia wrote, things we wait for eventually come to us. So the day so much expected to visit my loved ones finally came. So again, Patricia was smart. She didn't insist. She didn't want to go before she was mentally ready. And she also had people with her. She said, accompanying me were Arthur, Mauricio, Federico, and Grandma. I could not help thinking it was too many people for a simple visit. Mauricio, as usual, was reading my mind, so he clarified. So she had all these people going with her because they wanted to make sure she was protected and she understood what she was seeing. She understood the scene unfolding before her eyes on the earth plane. Because you have to look differently. When you're a spirit, you look differently at us on earth. We're just kind of immature students running around doing everything stupid. And you can't say, oh my God, he's doing something stupid or harmful. It's like, oh, he's going through a learning process. It's like watching your kindergartner, trying to eat glue or paint with his fingers and doing everything stupid. But you have to let those little ones do stupid things because they learn. You can't tell them not to do it because a lot of times they have to see for themselves how it doesn't really work. Same thing here on Earth. So Mauricio said, look, your grandmother is going because she wants the pleasure of being with you on your first visit home. I'm going because I'm responsible for you. Arthur and Federico are going because they want to be with you, sharing your happiness. And then Arthur said, let's go, Patricia. He goes, aren't you going to give me last minute recommendations? Patricia asked. He said, no. He laughed. He goes, don't you think you've heard enough? Anyway, with all these people accompanying you, I doubt you'll be the one to guide us. And we laughed. But I was nervous as we walked towards one of the colony gates. And then Patricia asked, Arthur, are all the residents and guests able to visit their families? And he said, no, few are able to enjoy this pleasure. And all because of the lack of preparation and understanding from incarnates and discarnates alike. The discarnates residing at the colony are those who are useful. Guests are those going through an adjustment phase. These, in order to visit Earth, need to be conscious of their own passing over and of the nature of their family problems. They must have a total understanding of the fact that they are only visiting them. The family being visited must be resigned to their loss, meaning that there is no risk of them trying to hold on to the visiting discarnates. They cannot enjoy these visits if they have the slightest emotional perturbation. Many want these visits, but only a few are able to have them. So again, as I told before, I gave you examples. And if a family is just completely devastated and still wishing that person was back, it just makes us emotional ties that make it very hard on the spirit coming to visit them. And again, that's something to understand. The colony of San Sebastian is one of the lower levels of heaven. And in those lower levels of heaven, people are more still kind of, I don't know if tied, but I would say is a good word, but concerned with the earth, with their family. They could be concerned with their nation, their state, their favorite football club. I mean, their house that they want to be kept up for some reason. They're concerned with material ties and emotional ties for those still on earth. They don't understand how this is the campus and people go through well-ordered curriculums, all for their benefit. It's a different point of view you have to have. You have to have a wider point of view and know that everyone goes through ups and downs, vicissitudes, and everything is good for you, because even though you think yourself you're in the middle of some traumatic episodes, it really is just stimuli meant for your edification, meant to rip out primitive emotions and replace that with more advanced emotions: love, fraternity, charity, selflessness. So then, when I say San Sebastian colony has 3 entry gates. They are impressive, light golden in color, with beautiful carved drawings, mostly of flowers. They're also huge, with 3 openings for aerobuses to pass through them. Either the entire gate opens or just a medium-sized opening plus a door, controlled by equipment that is still unknown in the material world. The equipment measures the vibrations of those who want to pass through. There are also guards posted at the gates. Although colonies are not identical in design, they follow the same basic idea, since their objective is similar: to serve as temporary residents to discarnates. So let's talk about that for a second. Saint Sebastian has gates, a wall, and a guard. No Solar, also talked about in the book No Solar, which is a colony above Rio de Janeiro, which is much bigger than Saint Sebastian. It has about 1 million residences. It has gates, it has walls, it even has 3,000 person force, defense force. Now, why do you need that? You're in heaven. Well, it seems like these colonies, plus if they have guards, if these colonies are like right on the border with the lower zone, and therefore sometimes people will wander up through the lower zone who are not really ready to be in that colony, who will try to gain entrance. And when she says, the equipment in the gate kind of measures the vibrations of those who want to pass through. And what it's really doing is seeing what is the level of that person. And if that person is not a level in accordance with the colony, or higher, if it's higher, they'll pass through fine. But if it's lower than the affinity with that colony, it would be very painful for them to try and get through. And this gate may just be a complete door, so they can't get through. There's other writings and other spiritualist literature where there's a gate that is in the lower zone. It's not in the level of heaven, but it's in the lower zone. But it's kind of an outpost for spirits coming from the lower zone to help others. And also it's places where people in the lower zone can go inside and get help. So there's a gate in this colony, and this kind of more of a fort, a castle is really how it's described. And if you walk through, if you try to walk into the gate, you just feel so uncomfortable. It's just so bright. You just really, you just can't make that next step. for those who are lower immature spirits who still have primitive thoughts. Only spirits or people who are beginning to rise above where they are at can get through into that little fortress. The same thing here. So therefore, it just shows you there is a world, and in the lower zone, there are also sometimes forces that will, try to, attack colonies, and now maybe this is high enough up that really doesn't worry about that, but in these little areas that they'll actually have like electrical fence that will send out kind of warning shots to people and maybe kind of put them to sleep for a couple of minutes, stun them if they try and attack them. Because for these little outposts, and there's one called Mansion Pass, it's like a movable outpost. The area in the lower zone, they'll have armies go after and try and attack them and get them away because they don't want them. They don't want them there because people will leave their little hovels or the warlord city in the lower zone and escape and try to get to the higher plane. Same thing is if we put like some sort of portal in North Korea and said, okay, those people want to escape North Korea, come on in. The North Koreans wouldn't sit there and do nothing. No, they would attack and try to destroy because they don't want people to be free of that oppressive government. So then Patricia said, the door opened and we crossed. I was then able to see the wall from the outside. The entire colony was fenced in or walled. The terminology doesn't use it or alter its effect. It is surrounded by an energy field. Okay, there we go. A magnetic force that one can only leave or enter through the gates. This wall surrounding is made of the same material as the colony. That being the case, only a few discarnates are allowed to cross it. Those who are not allowed, usually souls rooted in evil and with harmful intentions, are prevented from entering by the magnetic energy field. The wall was beautiful, so I came close to it, touched it, looked up, and couldn't see where it ended. The visible part only reached a certain height, after which was the invisible magnetic field. So, see, must be in that San Sebastian, must be in that zone where you've got discarnates with not so, still primitive emotions, being the majority of them who want to get into that colony, who not really are ready for that. And even they said earlier when I read is that this colony is a temporary colony. It's made for people to come, learn about things a little temporary. This to say it could be years, decades for some people. They're just, they're just not ready for it. But so therefore it's this shows you how the spirit world really works. So let's talk about this for a second. You have levels of heaven. And as the higher levels of heaven, you don't need to have wall colonies, right? Because they can't even get into those levels of heaven. But you've got this city close to the end of the lower zone, and because there's no like boundary line. There's always an area in between. There's no exact boundary between levels of heaven or anything in the spirit, right? There's always kind of gradiences. And therefore, this feeling, this is what you just said, right? If you have the wrong vibrations, you can't do that. If you have evil intentions, you're not going to, you're going to be prevented from getting in there. So why are the evil intentions? Well, that's why you have the lower zone, because the lower zone is made of people who couldn't get into heaven. Going to heaven is something you earn. It's not a right. It's a privilege. And as the wonderful late Brazilian medium, Chico Xavier, said, only about 30% of the people who pass over go to heaven. So that means 70%. So what's our population right now? 6 billion, 7 billion? So only 30%, less than 2 billion, around 2 billion people, when they die, will go to heaven. The rest either go in the lower zone or below that, the dark abyss. And those people go to those zones for a variety of reasons. A lot of people in the lower zone, they're still materialistic. They don't, they love their house. They love their money. They were criminals, all sorts of reasons. But the fact is they couldn't look up and see the light and know that their love and service and, charity and fraternity was more important than accumulating wealth or getting revenge on someone or, whatever it was. And that's why it's so important to do whatever you can in this life to prepare your mind and your attitude and your personality so you too can go through that narrow door, as Jesus said, and go into one of these colonies in heaven. So, then she said, to be even able to see the wall one needs to vibrate in the same frequency level. Many evil, ignorant, discarnate souls cannot find it because they cannot see it. My 4 companions observed me as I examined everything with curiosity. Arthur, I asked, I always wonder what happens when a plane flies through here. And they said, well, the colony is far from the airspace airplanes use. It's a lot higher, but some rescue stations are in the same space where airplanes pass. They go right through them and nothing happens. Colonies and rescue stations are not made of solid matter, but of subtle matter. And she goes, how about missiles and spaceships? And the answer is, they don't bother us either. Colonies are not immovable. If necessary, they can be moved by the mental strength of those who sustain them. So really, the answer really is missiles and spaceship are also made of solid matter and not subtle matter. And you could consider it in a different dimension. Just like a spirit can walk through the walls here on earth. For us incarnates, I cannot walk through a wall, but if I died and came back here, I could walk through the wall because that's really, we are so ethereal. We are so less dense that we can walk right through it. And of course, that's why we're told by spiritualist literature that we can only see us, meaning incarnates on earth, can only see like 1/8 of the world around us. That's why a lot of times when people who are dying or have an NDE experience, they will sit there and all of a sudden they'll start seeing like a whole world about them. There's this wonderful book about a child named Daisy, and as she was dying, and her mother and father wrote this book about her, and she said, "Mom and Dad, I can see a whole world out there. I see trees, I see forest, I see this whole different landscape. I can see right through the walls," because she was going through that process of leaving the physical life to the spirit life, and she saw something completely different. And so that's why, and even they said here, like they can, and they said, look, they can move the colonies, they can do these things. That's why to really understand the spirit world, you have to look at it as a logical construct. It is like a densely packed database with all different states, right? If I'm object Brian, in this state, in my incarnate state, I am tagged that I have to follow the rules of the physical earth. I am now in status of incarnate. That means I can't walk through walls. It means my thoughts really don't affect anything. I can't say hey, I don't like this house. I'm going to make it look better. And I'm going to, through my mind, paint a different color. No, that's not going to work. Then if I pass off and I pass away and I leave this physical body, then I'm Brian in the incarnate state at a certain level. Let's say I'm just at the level of where she is. It's at the St. Sebastian colony. Well, then I am in the state where I can see the colony. I can learn to volatilate. I can learn to not worry about food, etc. I interact with all the aspects of the environment that it is programmed for me to interact with. I could be in the same place, right? I could be actually in the same place, and yet I'm interacting with a completely different environment. And to carry the analogy further, think about your app on your iPhone or your computer, your laptop, and you have an avatar, and you're making this person go from a forest to a desert, gets on a boat, goes through an ocean, and goes to another country, all on the computer screen. Well, that little avatar isn't really traveling a distance, although if you were that avatar, you thought you were traveling a distance. What that avatar was having was going through different states. He was in the state of a forest, and he saw trees. He was a state in a desert, he saw a desert. He was a state on a boat in an ocean, and he saw that. It's a lot like for us. And we earn advanced states, so we can see more, we can experience more, we have more tools in our toolbox by becoming more loving, kind, and really exploring Spiritism here on earth, and increasing our wisdom, because wisdom is emotions and feeling and kindness and charity plus knowledge, right? If you just have knowledge, you can still be a very mean, horrible person. You can be a very smart person, but you don't really call them wise, right? Because wise has that empathy, that emotion, that understanding that there is we're guided by divine laws, that there is no such thing as relative morality. So again, they say, how about missiles and spaceships? Well, they don't bother us. They go right through us. So they said, okay, let's go now. So he said, we held hands. Patricia said, I knew how to volatilate, but it was the first time I would go very fast and go for a long distance. They held my hand to help me, since when groups leave, they don't hold hands unless there's a novice among them like me. We traveled so fast in a matter of a few minutes that I did not see anything. We landed in the backyard of my house. Now, when you volatilate, it's like the people put in an image of her house or where they wanted to go, right? And they were there. And to them, it's like the scene went. Whew. Now, if you volatilate, you can go slow. You can see the scenery. It depends what your mind, what you want to do. Now, remember, in the spirit world, there is no speed of light, speed limit. So the answer is, if you want to go to Earth, to the other side of the galaxy, you're there. Okay? You don't have to get in a spaceship. You can say, hey, I want to go to the middle of the galaxy. I want to see this black hole, we're swirling around. Okay, let's go. In fact, there was this part where Chico Xavier was in his house. And he was thinking, I wonder what the whole universe kind of looks like. And his spiritual guide, Emmanuel, said, well, do you want me to take you? He goes, okay. And he took him up over the earth. He could see the earth. And he took him and he kept going above the solar system. He could see the whole solar system. Then he took him above the Orion arm, right? Kind of our little spiral in the galaxy. And he could see the whole galaxy. And he kind of took him beyond, beyond the galaxy. And Chico said, okay, that's enough. Let's go back and I want to go back and eat something now, because it was like all done in split seconds. That is, another little aspect of living in a logical construction. And of course, now when I describe this, and everyone needs to go through, I'll describe different levels of heaven, right? The levels, the lower zone around the earth, the core, of the crust of the earth up to the end to the beginning of heaven. And then the dark abyss is below the crust, below that. And now, of course, I'm describing that in terms of where we can visualize it, but it's probably more in terms of data and states. But so sometimes I intermix that. And so just understand that I'm trying to kind of give it visually so people can learn it, and also talk about it logically so you can understand. Because when we talk about distance in the spirit world, the spirits tell us, no, there's no distance. It's presence or absence. Patricia and her home, she was there or not there. As you can see, they went there by thought. There was really no distance. They thought of the house and they were there. They thought of the house, they went into the state where they were at the house. So let me continue on. So let's enter, Arthur invited, because the door's open. But if you want, Patricia, you can go through the wall. He goes, next time, I said. My mother was in the living room, crocheting. She looked thinner. I stood in front of her and looked at her for a long time, realizing how much I love her. Then Grandma urged me tenderly, go on and hug and kiss her. And Patricia then said, I came closer very softly and kissed her hand and face. Once conscious of being discarnate, one notices several differences when approaching an incarnated person. I tried to hold her hand, and mine went right through hers. I kissed her slowly, very emotionally. I had always appreciated everything we had, but not with exaggeration. I had always been grateful for everything I owned and was careful to value each object. Seeing the house again, my home as it used to be, I gave thanks to the Lord. I always thought I had more than I deserved. I felt like crying right there in front of my mother. However, I made an effort not to do it. I got up and sought refuge in my grandma's arm. Now, Arthur said, encouraging me, let's go see Carla. Then we'll go to the ranch to see your father and your brother. You'll volatate by our side and we'll go slowly, Mauricio said. So vibrations, this is what she's writing now. Vibrations on Earth are a lot heavier than in the colony. They are higher at the colonies because there is no evilness there. On Earth, there are good and bad minds vibrating. Many discarnates from the colonies and rescue stations feel suffocated, dizzy with a light malaise, and when they come back to Earth for the first time. I did not feel anything since I was supported by my friends. So let's talk about that. So as other spirits have talked about, when they come into Earth, they say, oh, it's dark, it's dreary, I'm surrounded by kind of this, this stuffy feeling, and I get exhausted, right? We have all this energy of spirits, but it affects us. And that's why there are health stations and temples for spirits that have to come regularly on missions to Earth and to come down into this kind of heavy vibrations. And as the spirit under Luis once said, as he went down and he came down into Rio de Janeiro and he saw people like on a bus and he saw all these dark clouds are on each individual person, all thinking their own thoughts, like I need money, I want to do this. It's all, all these kind of material thoughts, which I don't blame anybody, I have them too. But it's just, it makes us, a lower vibration. And that's why when these people return, they'll have like, sanatoriums for them. They'll have like music and health and kind of waters that will help them feel better because they are affected by these vibrations and these emotions on Earth. That's why she's saying that vibrations on Earth are a lot heavier than in the colony. They feel that. But of course, they did this on purpose for her, right? Because she said, I didn't feel anything. But that's because she had this kind of wall of good feelings by friends around her. And they probably without telling her, they kind of kept this kind of, this invisible protective cloud for her. So then she said, we volatiled, and I stayed in the middle, but alone. It's very pleasant to see the city from high when you are volatiling. We arrived at Carla's house, and I hugged them all. My sister, who would soon give birth to my much expected nephew, and my brother-in-law, Luis Carlos. Afterward, we went to the ranch. How wonderful it is to volatilate over the field, seeing the trees, the crops, and the animals. I saw Juinho working, and I went and gave him a big hug. That's her brother. I went to my father, kissed his hands, and thanked him. My dad was thinking of me, transmitting his usual encouragements. Now, her dad, was a spiritist, so he never said, oh, I'm so sorry, my poor daughter passed away young. No, he did this very smart and intelligent, and the way you should think when people pass away is say, don't worry, Patricia, we're supporting you, and he prayed, he said, please, other spirits, help my daughter in the spiritual colonies. You just learn, we'll take care of ourselves here on our trials on Earth. That's how one should approach and think about those who have passed away. And she goes, I kissed and hugged him and then looked at our ranch house. And then Patricia says, can I go through the wall now? And said, sure. And goes, I went to the house, but I stopped right in front of the wall. Goes, how do I do it? And I said, it's simple. Think you're going to do it and you will do it. In fact, she said, it was simple. So I went through the walls and doors several times. Patricia, let's go to your Aunt Vera's house. Maybe if everything goes right, you'll be able to dictate a message to your mother, Arthur told me. Transmit a message by psychography? I don't know how. He goes, you'll learn. Marissa answered calmly. How would it be to dictate a message? I thought. Curiously, I held their hands and we left, volitating fast. So, in our next Sunday, we'll talk about how she actually psychographed how her aunt. When we said psychograph is a medium who writes what a spirit kind of puts in their head. And that's how, and I talk about that in psychograph in my book, How We Are Guided by Spirits. And psychographing, and I've been in mediums meetings where they psychograph. And that's where they'll just sit there and you won't hear anything, right? And all of a sudden you'll see someone take, a paper in front of them, a pen, and they'll start writing. And they'll write a message from a spirit. They'll write what this spirit kind of put the thoughts in their mind, and they'll write that. It takes practice because you really have to cleanse your thoughts of everything and then allow these words to kind of form in your mind. And of course, everyone does it differently. I've never done it, but, and it's just, because I've had messages from my wife and I've had quite a few messages from spirits giving us guidance and those type of things. Now, this isn't a spiritist tender, and I also want to make sure everybody knows we never paid any money. We've never given any money to the Spiritist Center. In fact, they help us in many, many ways. And so this is all about helping others and helping us bring Spiritism to other people on earth. And I talk about these things in my book 3, How We Are Guided by Spirits. And of course, the first book is Heaven and Below, then Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and then How We Are Guided by Spirits. And it's all about the available spiritist literature from Reverend Shiva Owen, Chico Xavier, Yvonne Piera, and others. And, how spirits guide us, how they guide nations, what is the future of the earth. So these are all things that should be of interest to people who really want to understand that we're not just this world we're in. It's just a temporary thing. It's a place for us to learn, to be better people, to modify our personality and our character. And if you can learn that, and then learn that, then you should branch out and learn about the processes of the real world, the spirit world, of reincarnation, of karma, of what it means to go from one level to the next level of heaven. What is heaven? What is the lower zone? Who is Jesus? He's more than a carpenter that came 2,000 years ago. Much more than that. It's marvelous. It's information that I'm not telling you these things say, oh, you have to do this, or there's going to be hell to pay. No, it's information that is for you to decide on yourself. You have free will, but whatever decision you make, it's okay. You got many lives to be a better person. Nothing you do now is going to destroy you forever. You're not going to ever go to hell and be in damnation forever. There is no such thing. God loves us. Jesus loves us. And we're all about here to be educated. And that's why I want to spread this so you can understand that love permeates everything. But as part of that love, there is chaos and there's seemingly horrible things happen to people on earth. And that's why I think it's important to learn about Spiritism, because you'll understand why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. It's all part of the plan. Those good people have bad things happen to them. A lot of times they requested that because they wanted to go through that trial. They wanted that stimuli to affect their character because they knew they had a blemish. They knew they had something they had to rip out. The bad people that something good happened, well, they probably said, oh, we'll let you be rich. Well, they're rich. Well, guess what? They got rich by taking advantage of others. They're still rude. They're not humble. Guess what will happen in the next life? They will be put in a humble situation. There are stories of Roman generals who were very wealthy, fantastic, great generals, great tacticians. Their next life, they were on the banks of the Tiber, could barely shuffle along, begging for alms, or denarii, I guess I should say, in the Roman times. This is how it works. This is why I always tell people, they talk about reincarnation and what I was in the previous life. And I keep thinking, I was this duke or queen of something. And I keep thinking to myself, you don't really want to be powerful because then you got more capacity to do wrong. Because I should know, because I've gotten messages in the spirit world saying that I've been in positions of power and I was just a complete idiot. and I stole money from the people. I didn't, so I'm sure I went through life after life of pain for my past wrongs. So anyway, I hope that helps everyone today. I hope that makes you interested in really what the world is like, this reality of what we think it is, of what everyone says, well, don't believe anything that science doesn't tell you. Well, first of all, they don't know what we're talking about, because a scientist will tell you there's a lot he or she doesn't know. And there's no absolute. And there's many mysteries of this world. In fact, how the Big Bang and everything came out perfectly and were made is still a mystery. But I say it's, yes, there's evolution. Yes, the Earth took billions of years to form and cool and so on. But it was somewhat guided evolution, guided by the spirit world, all for our edification purposes. Anyway, I want to say thanks for being with me tonight. Please subscribe and hit the bell and hit the like. God bless all of you.